we have a unbelievable guest
Yes, we do.
before our eyes. He used to be a coworker, but even before a coworker, he had an 18-year career in commercial real estate before he started doing broadcasting and covering NCAA, Prime Sports Radio, Big East Conference, and later he went on to ESPN and obviously with the NFL Network as the draft guru. Our coworker, former coworker, teammate, workmate, and wise old owl, Mike Mayock.
That's a hell of an introduction, Mike. I like that.
Yeah, I got to get used to being the oldest guy, and like everywhere I go, I'm now the oldest guy. Whether it's a podcast or out to dinner or whatever, I'm the old guy. I don't know about wise, but that means I pay the bill, I pay the drink bill, I pay the dinner bill. I'm the old guy, so it's all good.
Hey, well, since you're in a, since we're having a drink right now, you want to pay this production bill for me?
That's Palmer. He's making a big money.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. I'm along for the ride. And anybody from Philly, by the way, Mike, that's
Don't play that card yet
like
until I check your. No, I just want to check his street cred before he starts playing that card.
I wanted to ask you this, Mike, to kind of start off with, because the reason we want to have you on is obviously you're general manager of one of the best draft minds that are out there. You've kind of done it all in what goes on at this exact time period in the NFL calendar. And where we're at in these weeks leading up to the draft. I know everybody does it differently, but where your experiences, how do the character evaluations, the medical evaluations, is this the time period before, where does that slate when you're starting to go through all of these evaluations in a NFL building? That's where we want to take people.
So the reality is, and you guys know this, but just from a big picture perspective, when you're talking about the scouts, it's 365 days a year. It just is. And as a matter of fact, at this time of the year, a lot of the GMs are releasing their area scouts from this draft to go ahead and move ahead to next year's draft. Mm-hmm. So, it's year round. What's going on right now and recently, like, for instance, your final board, which should be your Bible, if you're a well-run organization, you'll answer all the questions to the test before the test starts. Okay, and you'll believe in your board. So the board the finishing touches on that, you should have already kind of run it all by the coaches. You're probably dressing it up and putting it up on your wall this weekend at the latest. You've got your most trusted scouts in there with you. And I think what's really kind of interesting, you ask about the character and you ask about the medical. You might have read recently there's a bunch of medical rechecks going on in Indianapolis. That's normal.
Correct.
Francis Mauigoa, who didn't miss a game in 4 years, 48 consecutive games, he has to go back for a recheck. He's got a back issue that some people are worried about could be chronic. Now, apparently it was a clean bill of health, but it's just kind of a note. There are other guys. I think Tyson went back, the wideout from Arizona State. He had some soft tissue injuries, hamstring and stuff that wouldn't allow him to work out. So he had to go back. So there's a bunch of big name guys and just normal guys that are going back for recheck. And you're also meeting with your own doctors. Okay, so your own doctors are assigning grades basically from like 1 to 5, depending on what cleanest to we got a problem, and everywhere in between. Okay, so the rechecks go to part of that, but it's a painful meeting when you sit down on a final meeting with your doctors, and it's you and your head coach, maybe the owner, and your doctors, and they're saying, okay, I'll give you 2 examples that are real life. Kansas City's got an all-pro guard that went in the, what draft did he go? Tyler Smith out of Tennessee.
Yeah, we had the lung, right, Mike?
He had the heart-lung issue, right?
Yeah.
And our doctors said you can't touch him. The heart issue. So we had a kind of borderline first, second round grade on this kid. He's a guard. Mm-hmm. First or second round. We're getting into the 4th and 5th round, and Gruden is screaming at me. Like, He wants this dude, and I don't
Yeah.
blame him because I wanted him. He's a hell of a player,
Yeah.
right? And when Kansas City, the team in our own division, took him in the 6th round, Gruden damn near shot me, and the guy's gone on to become a multiple Pro Bowl kind of player. And I'll give you another example. The Eagles, Landon Dickerson, left guard at Alabama. We had a 2nd round grade on him. I love the kid. We love the kid. Our doctors told us we couldn't touch him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think it was knees, chronic knees, wouldn't get to a 2nd contract, whatever. Howie Roseman and the Eagles take him in the 2nd. He's been a big part of 2 Super Bowls. Yet last year he starts to fall apart a little bit, and he almost retires after his 5th year. So there's some validity in that. All 32 teams get the exact same X-rays and reports, yet they see it 32 different ways.
Yep.
Similar to character.
Yep.
Okay? So medical and character are about opinions. And for instance, right about now, maybe last week, you would start to get reports back, and just about every team has an independent company that does security. Mm-hmm. And you pick up the phone and you tell them, okay, I got 14 red flags that need to be checked out. And they go into these kids' lives. And they do a lot of background checks.
Hold on, Mike.
And beyond. Yes, sir.
Give us a example, no names, no teams.
Yep.
What is a red flag for
Good
a
question,
player?
Steve.
Sure. It's when you call it character, it typically goes beyond a lack of football competitiveness. It's something off the field. Okay? Mm-hmm. So somebody beat up his girlfriend. Mm-hmm. Somebody had a domestic violence issue in our building with Mark Davis. That was taboo. He wasn't going to draft anybody with that background.
Touche. Good.
Okay? So that was a biggie in our building. A guy has a car crash, a DUI. A guy has anything, and there are certain things that called Title IX exceptions that are dealt with by the university and kind of supposed to be behind sealed information. And you can kind of find ways to find out about some of those guys. And I'm not talking about bribes or anything like that. I'm just saying that there are ways legally
the heavy
to
duty
go.
Stuff.
Yeah, you're a sleuth.
Yeah, there are ways legally to kind of peel back some stuff that's legalese. And so it's all that kind of stuff, Steve. And there's a few, there's usually your scouts do a hell of a job of narrowing it down to a certain number, but then it becomes a lot of legal stuff beyond that. Like if and the better the player, the more work you're likely to do on them, because the heavier the risk if you take the kid high.
Yeah.
So
Mike, with that, I know you mentioned these are all opinions, and I think that's a great point that you made. Like right now, we're hearing, you hear all over the league, well, his interviews weren't great, or I think this team says he's a bad guy. How much stock do you take in what you're hearing from other teams, or do you just tunnel vision it with your group, your interactions, your staff, that you just try to, with character or things like that you block those out, or do you hear those and ask further questions, or do you look at what you have in your building solely with these things?
I think the reality is you're trying to be as true to your own building as you can be. Now, if something comes out of the woodwork, and a lot of scouts and GMs call it chasing ghosts at this time of year. You chase ghosts not only with players that come out of nowhere that are height, weight, speed guys that can't play a lick, but they show up. They show up out of nowhere, and you got to go make sure he isn't really a player. You never heard of him. You've evaluated, 1,000 players or something, and he was not in the first 1,000. Yet all of a sudden, we're a week from the draft, and you're like, "Oh shit, who's this guy?" Right? So you, not only are you chasing those kind of ghosts, but occasionally you might hear a rumor or something about a player you like or you've already cleared, and then you better go back and check it. You better go through security, and the first stop is your area scout because he knows the player better than anybody. But beyond that, you're digging deep on Steve, do you remember first round pick who's still a good player, Jeffrey Simmons in Tennessee?
Yeah, he's a beast.
Yeah, he's a beast, and we loved him. And he
Rough
had
around the
a
edges.
he had an issue. Yeah, he had some issues coming out, especially coming regarding women and that type of stuff. And we went. This is real life. I mean, we went to the owner, and we showed him all of the work we had done. We showed him what security came back with that said that there was a significant case to be made that the woman involved was lying and looking to get paid and all those other things. And we told the owner about it and that we were really interested in this kid in the first round. And the owner said, I got one, and I thought this was a good request. He said, I have one request then. Bring him in for a 30 visit, and I'm going to sit down with him one-on-one. I don't want anybody else in the room.
I love
And
that.
I went.
I like that.
I did too. I give Mark Davis credit for that. And we brought him in. He sat down with him. He grabbed me later and he said, you know what? He said, in conjunction with all the work you've done on this kid, I agree. If you want to take him, you take him.
Let me ask you this, Mike. How in today's game, with today's athlete, Gen Z, how do you decipher between a kid loving the lifestyle of what football can give them and loving actual football?
Point, Steve.
That's always been a question, as Steve knows, but it becomes even more important now. And the irony, Steve, is sometimes it's almost easier now, as some scouts are telling me, because players are getting paid. Now that players are overtly getting paid, not under the table, but overtly, all of a sudden, if a kid gets a $3 million paycheck and he tails off as a player the following year, you're going, My scouts were telling me he was a little bit of a dog before, and I'm saying dog in a negative sense.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden he gets paid and he reverts back to that. So there's a lot of stuff happening, Steve, based on all the new rules in college football, the NIL, the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Like another example is players are getting older. Players are sitting
Old
there
as
going,
hell.
hey,
They 25, 27 years old.
Yeah.
dude, players are sitting there and their agents are saying, listen, you know, you're a offensive lineman getting paid $450,000. You're making more right now than you might be a practice squad guy next year. At best, you might be a 5th round pick, a 7th round pick. You might not be a draft pick, and you're making $450. So maybe you should stay in school every day you can. So we're
Not
getting
every
older.
day, Mike. Every day?
Day
Match
you
eligibility as
can.
they give you. Yeah.
That boy getting 400,000 plus room and board and
unbelievable.
a lunch stipend.
Yeah.
He's like, man, I'm kidding. Chick-fil-A for lunch. I got my son in college, so man, I got 8 transactions a day. I can do.
It's unbelievable. And they're all. What's also happening, and I was talking to a couple GMs recently about this, is because of the age. You know, we got more 24-plus-year-olds than ever. We're also seeing more injuries, more wear and tear. So now that whole medical thing comes into play, even to a higher level.
Interesting. Are there positions, Mike, where the age is beneficial? I think quarterback, obviously, people are loving the starts that some of these guys are getting. But are there any other positions where like the time spent in college is benefiting some of these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tyler Shuck last year was the poster boy for that. He spent 7 years in college. You know, he had the code. Remember I worked on it. I got 5. But I mean, he had every college player had the COVID exemption, which is finally starting to run out now. Plus, he had a couple of medical exemptions. But he and his team of agents spun it in a positive way. Like, hey, he's been in 4 different systems. He's had to pick it up quickly. He can come in day one.
It's true.
Yeah, and there's some validity to all of that, especially to your point, James, at the quarterback position. What we're seeing is, like, I think the best combination is the young guy with a lot of starts. And we're seeing it with a lot of offensive linemen this year. Like the top offensive linemen, most of these guys, Maui Noah, 48 consecutive starts. Fano, 3 years of consecutive starts. Proctor at Alabama, 3 years, didn't miss a game. Miller from Clemson, 54 consecutive starts. And most of these guys are, with the exception of Miller, they're only 3 years out of high school. So
That's good.
when the
That
cream
makes them very
rises,
attractive.
yeah, when the cream rises to the top, and some of these kids are 20 years old. They won't be 21 until they report for camp, and they got 40 starts in college ball. So that's really kind of what teams are looking for in the first round, or the clean, high-level guys that aren't 25 or 6 yet.
Mike, let me ask you this. On television, right, the TV world, we call this a reach for a player. But in the team aspect, it's not. Man, explain that for the fan who's sitting on the couch and say, hey, that was a reach. We should have never got that guy. But for the team, you're going, no, this is exactly who we should got because this is what we need.
Yeah, there's a lot of arguments out there, especially based on whether you're in a head coach-driven building or a GM-driven building. And my contention is that if you want to look for dysfunction in the NFL, the first place to look for it is when there's confusion about those two roles. Okay.
Yeah.
I had a prominent Hall of Fame head coach 20 years ago. I said to him, how many teams do you worry about on an annual basis? He said, maybe 6 or 7. And I said, wow, why so few? He said, the other 25 will eliminate themselves. And think about that.
Can you give us examples when you mean a GM-driven team versus a head coach? Outside of the obvious, like, this guy makes all calls, but give us the real, what people don't actually know, what really transpires, and use like kind of the draft as an example of that, if you don't let mind.
Yeah, it's really important to GMs and head coaches as to who controls the draft, number one, and who controls the 53-man roster in season, number two. Those are two potential points of contention. And the easy thing to say is that, even though the GM is ultimately responsible, don't worry, we're gonna come to an agreement on everything. We'll work hard and blah, blah, blah. It'll be a team effort. And if the head coach has it, it's the same thing. Oh, don't worry, But in reality, when ego gets in the way and people who think they're good evaluators and they're not good evaluators get in the way, there's a lot of issues in NFL buildings where players get drafted when and where they shouldn't because of these kinds of battles. And I'm not saying head coaches are wrong or GMs are wrong. I'm just saying the number one thing, and Steve Smith, I think, will agree with me, and what I used to say every day in the building, it was in my head, was like, we got to do whatever's best for the building. Nothing else matters. Not my ego, not John's ego, nobody else. It's got to be whatever's best for the Raiders we got to do, no matter how comfortable or uncomfortable it is. It sounds really simple. You'd be friggin' amazed how many times it doesn't happen. Steve, you're shaking your head, right? You believe that?
I do believe it. I'm shaking my head because, I was a product in Carolina of where the general manager was driving the bus and the head coach was not. And I recognize and see that now sitting in this seat. But as a player, I was unable. I would take it a step further. I probably would have benefited more doing broadcasting before I played to be able to be a better football player business-wise, to actually know how it goes. It would have benefited me a great deal. Now, let me ask you this then, Mike. War room logistics. How do you simulate the chaos of the draft? I've heard that you guys run practice drafts where, you call out and rattle off, trade offers and all that stuff. How do you simulate that, but at the same time not cause some inner conflict and you start to overdo things to where you kind of poop the bed when the draft comes? Like Minnesota did it for 2 or 3 years, 2 or 3 years straight in a row where they couldn't get the damn pick in, and it happens.
So, I mean, just to be very transparent about myself. Let's be honest. There were a lot of people that didn't think I deserved a GM shot because I didn't come up through a building. And I did it a different way. And my thought process was kind of, my job for 20 years at the NFL Network was to be in all 32 buildings. And because of that, I developed relationships with coaches, scouts, general managers, and I saw a lot of ways to grow a franchise and how to destroy a franchise. And a lot of that stuff I took with me. Like, okay, I believe in this, I don't believe in that. There's no one right way. But I guess the point is, I was nervous going into that first draft because I hadn't been in a building, I hadn't been in a war room. And now I'm the GM in the war room. So those the week or two before, with all the mock drafts and simulations, were critical for me. And I wanted to get pushed hard. And the way we did it was I assigned a group of scouts different teams. Like it might have been, 8 scouts get 4 teams apiece or whatever. And you go study them. You know it anyway. Our pro scouts know it like the back of their hand. You better know these freaking team needs better than I do. You better know them. And you better challenge me, because here's what we're going to do. We're going to get our analytics guys in the room. And Steve, there's a couple phones sitting right next to me and an analytics guy. And what the analytics guy does is, if you get a trade offer, he's popping in the point total from all the different charts that people use to tell us.
No way. Wow.
So he's popping it in. So when I get a call from a GM in the real world, and I put it on the speakerphone so the analytics guy can hear it, and he's like, Mike, we want to come up. We're going to come up 6 spots to 17, and we're going to offer you this and this. What do you think? And by the time 20 seconds after he finishes his sentence, I got my analytics guy showing me, hey, that's minus 200 points. In other words, we probably don't want to do that draft. And here are some options for you to make up the point differential. Maybe it's a 5th round pick. Maybe it's a swap of 4th round picks. Different ways to get to a number that makes more sense. So basically, oh, hell yeah. Every team in the league does this. And in these, quote, mock drafts, I'd have my analytics guy here, and I'd have a couple of my most trusted scouts who are also making calls on my behalf. If we want to move up, I'm like, okay, you got these 3 teams, you got these 3, and I'll take these 2. We're calling our people, each one, and saying, hey, we want to move up to your spot. What do you think? Any chance? So it's a team effort throughout this. And meanwhile, the draft goes on. In the first round, there's 10 minutes, and then it gets less in the second and third, and then less on day 3. So basically, every team does at least a 1-round draft. We started with that, and I had them pushing me as hard as I could get them to push me on trades. Like silly trades, real trades, good trades. The hardest ones are to figure out aren't the draft picks. It's a current veteran player from another team. Yeah. So if somebody says, we'll give you a 3 and a backup guard. How do you
what's their value?
Exactly. Yeah. So how do we know that right away? And you better have the scouting report of that kid sitting there, and you better have a pro scout right there pulling up that report, and you better have an ability to go right to, I don't want him, but I want this 23-year-old. Yeah, I want this 23-year-old, not the 33-year-old. So all that stuff happens, and I did it for several days before the draft, to the point where I think some of the guys were getting tired of it, but because I just wanted to stress me. I wanted to make sure that I didn't panic under any of that kind of stuff. And the funny thing was, we got in the, where was it? The top, we had a pick at the top of the 2nd round my first year, like number, I want to say 35 or 6. And we traded down twice. And we had 2 guys that we knew we would take and one was a corner and one was a guard. And the first time we traded down, and Gruden was all nervous because he wanted one of those guys. And the phone rings again, and a different team wants us to trade down again, like 3 picks. And I'm like, John, there's only 3 picks, so we got 2 guys. You know, we're going to get one of our guys. So we traded down again, and the picks that we got ended up being Hunter Renfrow, who started for us and had a 100 reception year, and was a 5th round pick. And we got a starting tight end from LSU who's still in the league right now. So who's still a starting Foster Moreau. So there's just by moving down 5 or 6 picks, we ended up getting 2 starters, man. So there's real value to understanding the board and getting pushed in some of those meetings early.
Hey, Mike, so let me ask you, how do you stop the second guessing phase, right? Where these general managers driving themselves crazy overthinking their rankings, right? And pretend, and just all of a sudden over scouting players and changing a grade literally right up to the 9th hour.
And Steve, that's a really good question, and it's real. Okay. I found myself.
Nice work, Steve.
I found myself. So you get to the point where you've watched so much tape, and you're just you put another tape in, and you're watching. Now you've done 11 of his 12 tapes of his senior year, and you're just like, oh, look at that block against Clemson, and you just got to pull yourself away from it, and B, you got to have some guys that can kind of smack you in the face that are your high level scouts that look at you and say, Mike, stop it. Or I can do that with them. What are you doing? I don't want to hear that shit. We're already here on this guy. We did all the work. Be confident in it, and let's go. I mean, and that's what we try to do.
So you're telling me that 32 teams right now, general managers, need a guy that can slap the shit out of them, and I'm your guy. I mean, I'll do it for free. You don't even have to pay me. You need a slap you in the face guy? If you question my hand size out the draft, you ain't going to be questioning my hand size today.
Steve, that's one of the reasons you were as great as you were, is you were slapping the face guy. No doubt.
Very much so. Very much so. Actually, that's a great point. And Steve's a perfect example of this, Mike. And I was talking to a receiver coach about this a few weeks ago, and it was funny because he was going, we want these guys to be, I'll almost say like wired like Steve, right? You want a guy that's on the edge, but at the same time, you get nervous once he takes 3 steps past, right? That where you want him to be. Finding that sweet spot, that almost a Steve spot, where you have these guys that have this competitiveness to them and this dog to them like Steve had when he played, but at the same time making sure that he's like, it's funny because we want these guys to be one way and then we want them to be another way in another aspect. And it's hard to find that middle area when you look at some of these guys. How did you find that balance going, this is the right formula for a guy that maybe could be a cornerstone culture-wise, competitiveness, things like that of going, just it doesn't go too far in the wrong direction, but it's exactly where we want it to be.
Yeah, and so on your board, every team has different. So there's 7 rounds times 32 plus all the supplementary picks each year, which differ. So there's 250, 60, whatever there are every year guys picked. Your board isn't that big though. Everybody's got different size boards. Again, it's about your opinion. Smaller board is probably 140, 150 players. And theory being, obviously everybody has different boards, and the third day, all 32 teams are widely divergent. Like the first day, most people know who, there's probably 40 guys that are going to be the 32 picked. Everybody knows that. Which 40? But day 3, I mean, my 5th round pick might be Steve's undrafted free agent, might be your 3rd round pick. My 6th round pick. So people are all over the board. So basically, if you stick to your board, you get in this, you're at pick 180. You're probably picking on your board at about 110 or 120. Mm-hmm. Okay, because other guys get picked. So on that board, to your question, James, every team has either an asterisk or a star or a little, whatever that denotes a football temperament guy, which answers your question. And it might not be a 1st round pick. And there might only be 6 or 8 of them on your entire board. Okay, they're at different positions and in different rounds. But what they indicate is they play the game the way you want them to play in your building, and they will be accountable and team leaders.
Okay.
Mike, let me ask you then, how do you measure, how do you figure out the tension in a room between the different scouts? You know, one scout is pounding the table for this player, and then another scout is basically saying, hey, he doesn't fit our system. He doesn't bring anything to the table the same way. How do you level emotions when scouts are, you know, because I don't think people really understand. Scouts fall in love with players because they're literally looking at a player, like you said. They're looking at next year's draft right now, so they have to either fall in love, out of love, or they're still, you know, they don't know. Yeah. They're still trying to write the note, you know. Yeah. Do you like me? Yes or no, right? So they're really trying to figure it out. And so how do you balance that little bit of chaos or tension that's going to happen, especially with two men in a room have put in a lot of hard work to advance this the organization so y'all can go on and be successful?
There's an old GM saying that you got to evaluate the evaluators. And
Ooh, preach.
Interesting.
Can you say that again, please?
Mm-hmm. There's an old saying amongst GMs and around the league is that you got to evaluate the evaluators. And I knew on my staff, it took me probably my second year where I could tell the guys that were easy graders versus the guys that thought there's always a guy thinks he's the smartest guy in the room and doesn't think a player can do anything. And he's just as dangerous, if not more, than the easy grader.
Yeah.
And I remember years ago, I learned a great lesson from a really unbelievable source. And we were watching wide receiver tape. And he was like, what do you think of this guy? And I went into this long thing, you know, and using all the buzzwords and, you know, and his separation point and his, but, you know, I used everything and, you know, he can't do this and he can't do that. And I'd rather, and he looked at me, he goes, Mike, stop telling me what the kid can't do. I want to know what he can do. What he can do, because I'll make that work in my game plan if he can do that well enough. And okay, that was a lesson for a young scout. And again, going back to evaluate the evaluators. There are coaches that think there are great evaluators that aren't. There are scouts that are the same. Okay, you got to really scouts. You got to figure out the guys who. And Steve, to even get further into that and finish it, is that when a scout spends 10 or 11 months scouting a region, he's got a certain ownership in his players.
Oh yeah,
and he's going to get up and pound the table for his guys at our draft meetings, which he should. He also should be respectful of other people's opinion, like the cross checkers that are over him. Just making sure there is none of that bias that you're talking about, Steve.
Hold on now. What's a cross-checker?
Yeah.
They're generally veteran scouts that you trust as far as being able to look at any position around the country. And they're senior guys that maybe 3 or 4 of them, they will cross-check a certain number of players. And so what you're trying to do is force out the bias that you feel and see that you just talked about, Steve. So you've got somebody that doesn't have that ownership in one region who's saying, yeah, I don't, and that's why it gets interesting in the meetings. And I like a certain amount of, what's the right word? I like a little edge in our meetings where guys aren't afraid to get up and pound the table. However, the caveat to that is there's got to be some respect there for each other. And if the cross-checker comes in and has a different opinion and just goes, look, I didn't see it that way, that's okay. That's his freaking job too, right? So let him present it his way and you present it your way. And then what I always loved is when we had an argument, when it was just the scouts, and we had 2 or 3 big meetings every year where it was a room full of scouts. When there was an argument, we put the tape on. I mean, that's the bottom line. You know, forget all the rest of it. Okay, let's put the Bama game on. Or I want to see every target of this kid. Or I want to see every press coverage of this corner. And whatever the point was, we were going to go grind it out.
I love that. Steve, I got to ask this question because it ties into what Mike's saying. And when you're looking at these guys in certain regions and certain areas, and Mike, they look at this so thoroughly. When I look at small school guys like a Ted Hurst, like Steve and I did an episode on Ted Hurst, and when you're looking at the like maybe who they're going against, how do you guys take that to another level and evaluate the small school guys? And then the other one, Steve, remember when we did our episode on Zachariah Branch, where when a guy's used in a certain manner because of the offense or the quarterback, and it impacts a player like, say, Branch at Georgia, where Steve thinks there's a lot more he can do, but maybe it wasn't on the player. Remember you said that, Steve? Because he's limited because of the offense. So how do you find those guys? Like, how do you find what they can do?
I'll add to that is like, with Zachariah Branch, I look at that offense for the Georgia Bulldogs, and then you look at his average depth of target, 3.6 yards. That's not the player's fault, right? You don't want, because at the same time, you don't want a player sitting there causing an uproar. You don't want him to do a Steve Smith on the sideline where he's calling up to the phone, cussing out his offensive coordinator, especially out of a young player. You want a guy who will do what he's asked to do begrudgingly, but he still does it with high integrity and a lot of energy.
Right. So
how do you get to that next level of figuring these things out?
It's really intriguing. Let's talk small school first. You brought up Hurst, who's gaining some momentum.
Okay.
And I guess you guys were on him early, I think. But he's gaining a lot of momentum. Height, weight, speed guy, Georgia State, that can do a lot. The way that typically NFL teams and scouts want to differentiate with the small school guys has changed a little bit. Number one, there's still the all-star games, right? So if a kid's going to the East-West or the Senior Bowl or something, that's their week to pound their chest and say, this is me. Forget all, so there's been a litany of North Dakota State offensive linemen that have showed up at the Senior Bowl, kicked ass, and become, first or second round picks and played really well in the league. So
taking names.
The all-star games, exactly. The all-star games are a way to level the playing field first and foremost. Secondly, what's happened is because of the transfer portal and NIL, it's rare to get a kid like that that's still at a small school. It's the same with the safety from Toledo, McNeil Warren. Quinyon Mitchell didn't transfer out of Toledo. Most of those guys play well and all of a sudden get paid $1 million and they're in the SEC or the Big Ten the next year. So we're seeing a high percentage of the productive small school guys end up at big schools. And now we've got a chance to evaluate them. I think Steve's point is the hard one, and this is the one where, especially now with all the analytics, and my dad was a high school coach for 40 years, and he used to say, figures don't lie, but liars figure. And when it comes to the analytics thing, I respect it, and I've learned a lot. I work for Sumer Sports, and there's a lot of analytics. I've learned new terms. Steve just talked about average depth of target and how important that is. But if the kid's catching nothing but bubble screens in their offense and tunnels and that kind of stuff, it brings the numbers way down. And there's got to be the football eye, the Steve Smith, or the really good scout that looks at it and says, yeah, but let's put this in real world football. And let's look at this kid when he works out, or let's go work him out. And we're going to put him through a workout where we want to see the following routes, right? I want to see what kind of movement skills this kid really has. And, let's see a pivot. Let's see a choice. Let's see him come out of a comeback break deep. Let's see him run a dig. Let's see him stair step somebody and then take it back to the post or corner. Let's see different things that we want to see. Because if he can show me on just me, tell him I want to see this. If he can show it to me, if he has the skill set to do it, even though he hasn't done it a bunch, hell, we're golden.
I was almost thinking that, Mike, going like, do you want to work him out yourself then? Going, I see the talent. He just didn't run those routes in the offense he was in.
Yeah, you want to go
see him do it.
You're allowed to go work guys out. You just can't bring them to your building to work them out.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.
Well, we all know with
all of what's going on in the NFL draft and also what's going on in the world, we have to find that place where we can center ourselves, take the time to ask ourselves, what do we do and what do we need? Well, guess what, guys? BetterHelp gives you the opportunity to work around your busy schedule and figure out and sit down. You can do it on the go, or you can have it in your home virtually to figure out what mental health needs that you have. I'm a huge advocate for mental health, and BetterHelp gives me another opportunity to seek out licensed therapy. Therapy is important, folks. I know some of you don't believe in, but I believe in it. With the NFL draft right around the corner, these new players will now be thrust into new fame, new fortune, and a lot of decisions making. And sometimes when you have all of those coming at you all at once, you need a place and a moment to find your balance. And BetterHelp gives you that opportunity. I believe in it. It's been a mind-blowing and changing opportunity for me, and I hope you get the opportunity to work with BetterHelp like I get, to be able to help you process and go through some things in life that we all need help with. Visit betterhelp.com /89 to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com /89. We did Bryce Lance.
Yeah, we did.
From North Dakota State, and I looked at his film. Straight line guy, and some of the statements I said, which were, you can't allow the lack of talent to be the determining factor. And someone in the comments, his subscribe, like, and leave your comments, said, well, that's you got to use that as a negative because he didn't transfer because no one offered. What about a guy just doesn't want to transfer because he doesn't want to go through the new learning process? Or, let's be honest, the grass ain't always greener on the other side. You get there, or the possibility of going somewhere and the place you were going to go, that coach is telling you, hey, I'm only going to be here for a year and then I'm going to go somewhere else. So how do you determine loyalty and commitment to finish out your X amount of years at that college who maybe was the only school that gave you an offer?
Correct. And the whole key to that is just figuring out the why. And you can figure out the why. And what you want to make sure is the kid wasn't afraid of going up and competing at a different level. That's really the only thing that's what you're trying to exclude, right? So if the kid, A, is loyal because it's the only, and that's one that we see often. Hey, this is the only school that offered me. They're giving me as much money as they can. My parents live right here, or I got a sick grandmother that we're going to be close to. You guys just got to figure out the why. There's usually a really good why, and sometimes, Steve, it's even a positive for the kid. To your point, it might show loyalty. It might show I started a job and I'm going to finish it. There's different thoughts. You just got to figure the why out, and that's what our scouts and coaches are supposed to do.
Okay. Mike, I have to ask you this time period is where we see in the media, our good buddy Daniel Jeremiah has his top 50, guys change, and everybody's at home going, why are guys shifting spots when nobody's playing football anymore? Why are there still changes happening through this process, right? I know everybody's always kind of curious going, well, how did he get better when he didn't play any more games? I heard you on with our good buddy Rich Eisen the other day, and you said to Rich, this is a really interesting receiver class, and Omar Cooper Jr. is climbing in your mind right now the more tape you watch. Why does somebody start climbing, Mike, when you start watching somebody more? Is there a reason why? Is it just getting deeper into the process? Why do guys move when football's been done for a minute here?
I'm laughing because, the reason DJ's guys are moving around is because of the demands of the NFL Network to give them a new list every 3 weeks. I mean,
yep.
Why do you think?
Same
why
here.
Do you guys? Why do you guys think I did one mock draft a year? I only did one.
Mock Draft Integrity by Mike Mayock.
Because you were the old wise owl who said, I know this game and I ain't doing it.
Steve, you know what's funny as hell is that I bitched and moaned and told them there was no integrity to it. Like, guys do mock drafts before free agency's even even started. Like, what does all that is a waste of time. So I used to tell the network, I'm not doing them. I'm not doing them. I'm not doing them. And then it ended up that there was a demand because I never did them, and they turned it into a TV show. So the night before the draft every year, I had an hour special on my mock draft.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yes, I remember that no one else was allowed to be a part of. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
it's a good thing you don't like to slap people, Steve. It's good. But the James, that really, to use your, I'm not doing it full time anymore, so it's not like I didn't even watch Cooper during the season. The reason I said, like, Freeling and Cooper, in my mind, are two guys that have moved up a lot, and it's mostly because people were not as aware of them. Freeling only started 4 games a year ago, but he was athletic. And by the time he got to the Alabama SEC championship game, I was like, holy, this kid can really play. He might become the best left tackle in this draft, despite only starting 17 games, okay? The Cooper kid, the wideout, I hadn't seen much of him, okay? The league didn't know as much about him. They got another kid there that's pretty good, the other wideout.
Surratt.
Yeah, Elijah Surratt, thank you.
Yep.
Who I respect even more, just not even meeting the kid because he started at St. Francis of Loretto High School, Loretto, Pennsylvania, that doesn't even give scholarships. That's how low a recruit he was. Then he went to JMU, and then when the JMU coach went to Indiana, he went with him there, and now the kid's worked himself into a legitimate mid-round at worst draft pick. I mean, I love that story. I love that.
Yeah.
Everything about that, right? So I don't know if I answer your question, but their guys aren't like DJ.
Yeah.
Guys aren't moving up and down NFL teams' boards right now.
Let me ask you about 2 players. Jordyn Tyson from Arizona State, right? He's sustained all these injuries, right? You got him. But then you have a guy like Denzel Boston who seems a little boring, but he's steady Eddie. How do you look at those guys where one, if he stays healthy, man, you're going to get a tremendous player. But if he does not stay healthy, But then you got a Denzel Boston who he stayed healthy, but he's just, air quotes, he's just average. He's like a PB&J. With grape, with strawberry, that you don't know you need until you take a bite into them and you go, oh man, it's exactly what we were talking about.
Every time.
Yeah. There's a couple different levels to this conversation. I mean, one is, I think where Boston has the advantage is from a big body receiver perspective, even though I think the position of wideout is getting blurred somewhat because of what offenses are doing with all the bunches, rubs, stacks, motions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not just really an X, a Z, and a slot anymore. You look at what the Rams do, and that's really what it is. You know, and if you're Puka Nacua, you know, you're in C gap blocking linebackers and safeties, and you might be running a slot route and a choice route on one play and running a corner route the next, and the tight end might be running the next corner, and there's a lot of stuff going on that blurs what's going on there. But there are still a real value to teams in having an X, a traditional X, a Mike Evans type guy that can be in the backside of trips and have you dictate coverage. Okay, you bringing a safety over top of that 6'4", 220-pound monster, or not? Because if you're going to let the safety stay over on the other side and help the trip side, then we got single up over here. Okay, and that's oversimplifying a lot of stuff, but there is still a school of thought that big X has value, and I believe in that. I believe that the big X that can catch the back shoulder, compete for balls in the air, especially with a young quarterback, it gives them a chance. Gives them a chance. Mm-hmm. So there's some value to that guy. Number one, Jordyn Tyson. I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, he's sexy as all hell. Mm-hmm. Right? You look at him, and man, some of the I was just watching last night. Who was I watching? I was watching the Arizona State tackle that is really going to be a good player someday. That the kid from Nigeria that played at LA Junior College, East LA College.
Okay.
I for,
Ran through them in college. They were bad when I was in JC, but that's good. They're upgrade.
Program on the rise, Steve.
No, seriously. They didn't have.
Yeah.
They didn't have a program for years, man. So it's taking some while. Yeah.
Well, I was watching their right tackle, and I'd forgotten it. All of a sudden, Tyson is splashing all over the place, making plays, and I'm like, man, that's sexy. That's really, you can move him around anywhere, blah blah blah. But to your point, let's see, soft tissue this year, collarbone last year, ACL the year before. From a medical
MCL.
Perspective,
PCL.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
All the else. Yep.
The best predictor of future medical performance is past medical performance. And he's got a history of not showing up a lot. So that's an issue. And it doesn't mean he's not going in the first round, because he is. But you better have a medical plan for that kid. And I mean, you better have massage therapists, and you better have nutritionists, and you better have all kinds of stuff ready to help this kid do everything he needs to do to stay as healthy as possible.
A foundational player, when you're talking about you want a foundational player who loves the game, how do you distinguish between it all after the interviews? You've already checked the box of he loves football, he doesn't love the lifestyle, right? So he's checked all of the red flags, player and personnel, but it's not the quarterback, right? It's not the lineman. I'm talking about a guy, right? Hold on. You have the year you drafted Maxx Crosby and
Ferrell
from Clemson, right? Both guys now, you knew exactly what you were getting out of all of them. It was no guessing. So how do you find out which guy, right? Is there, well, this is a locker room guy, he's a great locker room fit. I'm trying to figure out, because some of this, we watch highlights today and we watch mic'd up and we get a unrealistic version of what that player really is as a human being and also as a football player.
Yep. All fair. The case with Maxx was interesting, Maxx Crosby. He went in the fourth round, pick number 106 for a reason. And every general manager in the league knew about his drinking problem. And we also knew there were probably drugs attached to it. And that he was somewhat out of control at different points of his college career. Okay? So with Maxx, there was a caveat. Maxx, you also, with that, didn't have the nutrition going on. Like right now, he does everything. Like I was at Max's wedding 2 years ago. I love Maxx, and
me too. Great dude.
He's just a great dude. We've talked over the years, and he'll even admit it. Like, he's an addictive personality. That's why he was an addict. And now what he's addicted to is football, and under that subtitle is success of his team, the Raiders. Like, I think he's frustrated as hell that he's only played one playoff game. And I think underneath that is Hall of Fame, because every player has their own dreams. And I think right now, I think it's realistic for Maxx, if he can finish out strong over a certain number of years, he's going to accumulate some great numbers and be a legitimate conversation. So Maxx is addictive. The football piece of his life is that. He's decided he's going to become a great father and husband. He's addicted to that. And the cool thing with Maxx is he can still go to all the fights that come through Vegas. He still hangs out. It's not like he's a recluse. I mean, Maxx has been able to get off the booze and the drugs and funnel it other ways. But to your question, now you get to the draft and you got this kind of skinny kid running around. He still had the same energy in college at Eastern Michigan, but we all knew about his addiction, and we all knew that is he going to grow into a 265 to 70 pound kid, or is he going to be a skinny 246 pound defensive end and with no nutrition and no clue? So there were some questions about Maxx, and that's one of the reasons he went in the 4th round. Okay. I would tell you point blank, at number 4, I tried to trade down as hard as I could because I knew Kyler Murray was going 1. I knew Bosa was going 2. I knew Quinnen Williams was going 3. And when I couldn't trade down, I tried to trade up the morning of the draft. I called San Francisco and I called the Jets, trying to move up to 2 or 3. And, of course, nobody would do either. So I was sitting at 4, and I would be the first one to tell you I made a mistake. I loved Clelin Ferrell, the person, thought he'd be a leader, all those things. He's a solid football player, but certainly not the elite kind of football player that should have been picked at number 4.
Mike, I really appreciate that your vulnerability and just being straight up. You know, a lot of former general managers, a lot of people up in the executive place would not be as upfront and forward and say, "Hey, man, you know, I made a mistake. I made a mistake." But the fact that you just admitted it, I think, speaks volumes. It's not surprising to me, but it speaks volumes and understanding, like going from television to doing it yourself, man. You got to pull the trigger and make some decisions that you're not always sure of, and you hope and you tried to do it, but you were stuck there and you had to make a pick, and you said you make the wrong pick, but. Ferrell he's a good player. I believe he's still in the league, but he's just not. He wasn't that top tier pick, but you know, he was a locker room guy. He was a leader, and everything coming out of Clemson was, you know, it was the right. It was a good quality human being football player pick, just not maybe the, you know, top 4.
Yeah, correct.
That's why Mike's on here. I've always loved your honesty in the way you approach the evaluations, Mike. It's probably my favorite thing about the way you do this. So before we go. Yeah. Do you have anybody in this draft? We are a receiver show, so is there anybody in this draft that you love, that you want to put your stamp on? Anybody you like? Anybody you've loved watching? Steve loves to do just certain players that he just falls in love with during this process, that he just enjoys as players. So, are there anybody that you want to mention before we go? And the time you've given us has been just unbelievable, so we appreciate it.
Well, it's funny because I love a wideout. I'm not sure Steve does, but I'm going to throw it out there and get Steve's reaction.
It's hit or miss. Yeah. Hit or miss with me, depending on the
day. And I wrote my final review on Makai Lemon, and I was basically like, football temperament is similar to Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's similar to Puka Nacua. It's similar to Cooper Kupp. It's not quite Steve Smith, but this is a guy who plays with an edge. And Steve, I've said my whole career, television and GM, that I like a guy with an edge. I like a guy with a chip on his shoulder, because handled correctly, a chip on your shoulder is a positive, right? Mm-hmm. So if a guy has something he wants to prove, it's going to drive him to be a better player. And you can see it on tape for the most part. You can see guys that are a little pissed off and have something to prove. I remember watching Amon-Ra St. Brown at his pro day at USC, and he was pissed off at his 40 time, and he walked around, he ran his routes, and I liked it. I was like, yes. I mean, he was upset. He had an attitude the whole day. Some guys were a little bit put off by it. And I was like, are you kidding me? This is what you want. You want a guy that wants to run a perfect route. You want a guy that wants to run a perfect 40. You want the guy that's been working his whole life toward a goal and is disappointed at anything less than what he expects. When I looked at you play, Steve, I used to love watching you play. You got in guys' faces and stuff, and if you crossed over and cost your team a penalty, then, you know, I didn't like that. But that's part of what. That's part of what. But it's part of what goes along with the Steve Smith package. Yeah. I look at Makai Lemon, and I watch him play the game, and he's digging safeties out of the C gap. He's running bubbles. When he's running routes down the field, when the ball's in the air, it's his. And if he doesn't come down with it, he's pissed. And he's competing all the way to the ground. He runs a variety of different routes, and it's easy to say he's just a slot guy, but in the blurring world of what the NFL wideout is, I think he can do more than that. And I also think that, he plays the game like the guys I mentioned a minute ago, which is, the guys that Nakua and St. Brown and Cooper Kupp, and he plays the game like those guys.
I got another question off that. Let's go back on the other side. Jacoby Lane, who's had some really good games where teams have really put a lot of assets on slow down limit. And Jacoby Lane is huge, he's big, but one of the things that I really was shocked, his inability to get off the press and how he was getting clamped up at the Senior Bowl. One-on-ones, like some of the corners that were doing the one-on-ones at the Senior Bowls weren't very good, but they got really good all of a sudden against Jacoby Lane pressed up. But how do you judge that when you look at if the ball is thrown in his direction, if he's not getting jammed, it's a catch. But he takes a little bit of time to get going and a little bit of time to create his free access and get off the jam on a consistent basis.
I think there's two things that people don't talk enough about in the media regarding wideouts, and one is proper releases from the line of scrimmage. And I'm not sure there's a whole lot of great coaching going on at the college level at that. But for instance, when you watch the Ohio State kids come into the league, most of them have already had an advanced degree because of Brian Hartline.
Yep.
Who played in the NFL and was the wideout coach up until this coming year. Brian Hartline got a combination of, let's face it, they only recruit 4- and 5-star athletes to Ohio State, and then you give them good coaching for 3 or 4 years. And these kids are coming out ready to run routes, ready to release off the line of scrimmage. And so I don't think we pay enough attention to, and this goes back to a prior question you guys asked, like if a kid, I always say, if a kid hasn't been coached it or taught it, you can't hold it against them. Okay?
Great point.
So if a kid can't get off the line of scrimmage because nobody ever taught him how, that's one thing. If a kid has the traits to get off the line of scrimmage and can't fight his way off the line or hasn't been, that's a different conversation, right? So the other thing is contested balls and an ability to come down, not just on the sideline with a contested ball, but anywhere on the field. And I don't care if that's underneath coverage, over top coverage, one-on-one coverage, two-on-one coverage. There's an attitude amongst special receivers that it's mine. Just freaking mine. And it's not always there, in my opinion. And when you see it, you know it. So those two things, I think, are important.
So, Mike, when you say when you see it, you know it, I generally get in trouble on this on my show because I try to do my best when I'm speaking to the kids. So I allow their film to let me sniff out and see the eye test if a kid can't, right? When I say can't, I'm talking about I look at when he drops a pass, what does his shoulder do? Where does his eyes go? How does he pop back up and jog back to the huddle, or does he look immediately to the sideline like, "Hey, coach, rescue me. I know I just made a mistake, but I don't want to do it because I'm scared or I'm embarrassed." Right? I like to call that the Kool-Aid valve comes off of their heart, where all of a sudden you start to realize, And then I say for some hood kids, they don't even have Kool-Aid. They Crystal Light, right? The substitute. So where is that place where you can look at the film without talking to a kid to kind of see a little bit what he's made of?
Yeah, I think with wideouts especially, like let's use KC Concepcion if you want to talk about drops.
Yeah.
He had a bunch of drops, and on the one, there are different kinds of drops, and different people who give the name to the word drop, some of whom don't know anything about football. Oh, that's a drop. Well, that might not be a drop. That might not have been a catchable ball for a lot of reasons.
Correct.
So you got to kind of go through the tape and gather. So I was watching Concepcion the other night, and I pulled together, I want to say maybe 12 drops from last year. And I think, you always say with quarterbacks, every interception tells a story. With receivers, I always say every drop tells a story, right? So he had 5 or 6 of the drops in traffic, and I didn't like it. And they were slants and in routes, basically. And where he's reaching and he knows he's in traffic. Okay? So on the one hand, it's not fair of me to kill the kid for several drops. Okay. On the other hand, if that's going to be a recurring pattern throughout his career and we can't throw in routes to him in traffic, there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to dig deeper on that and find out, wait a minute. Now I'm going to go to every friggin' target for his whole career, going back to both colleges, and we're going to look at the entire target reel and see how often he goes into the hell of yeah, exactly. How many times that kid goes into hell and comes out of it with the football, and how many times he doesn't.
Mike, Steve has been huge on a lot of these guys. When we talked about this earlier with NIL and things and guys changing schools, Steve this year has been huge on going back to guys' first school and looking at different situations and looking at film at guys' first stop compared to the second one. And Steve, that's been a big part of your film reviews this year.
It's been huge because I'll look at where they were, where's Chris Brazzell, how did he play at Tulane? And how did it change at Tennessee? Yeah, on paper at Tennessee it looked good, but he was 2 inches from the sideline, literally 2 inches from the sideline. And so now you're creating a one-on-one mismatch, and then catching a guy, you're throwing it, your quarterback's looking the screen to the left, but Chris Brazzell's to the right, and he goes and you throw a go route, and all of a sudden now he's open. He's uncoverable. Man, damn near about to get get pushed out of bounds. So you got that guy, right? And then we got a Malik Benson who is at Oregon, finished product, runs a great time. But then you watch him at Florida State, right? Back quarterback play. And all of a sudden you can see his confidence. My man was hoping he didn't get a bad pass at Florida State.
Right.
My man is walking out to the line at Oregon, right? He got his cojones is a lot different going up to the line at Oregon. Then I go back and
you did
watch
Burks at Purdue, by the way.
Yes, and then Deion Burks, man, he Oklahoma. But when I watch his film at Purdue, I'm like, man, this young boy can play. Yeah. Right? So I went back this year and watched a lot of guys. I didn't even waste my time with Jordyn Tyson in 2025 because his film in 2024, that boy you say he flashed, and he got a locks full of hair. Got me jealous, all right? He just so much, there's so much about these wide receivers. Let me ask you this question too, because I keep hearing this, and I keep saying it's not. Everybody keeps saying that this wide receiver class is so deep with talent. And I'm like, this wide receiver class is not deep. There's 70 wide receivers that have declared for the draft, there's about 50 of them will never play in the National Football League. Never, ever play in the National Football League. Do you think this draft class is as deep and legendary with a lot of potential gems as some of the non-football people are saying because they get enamored with a young guy who can catch and run that we see every single year?
I think people get enamored of the top end of the class every year, because the average guy at home doesn't know many people, and as media, we're at risk because all we do is show the top 20 players 100 times every day. We don't ever dive like you guys are, and you guys do. It's fun because you guys go beyond the obvious names. But on almost every show out there, and I used to kill the NFL producers all the time when I was there. Like, can we talk about a guard, or can we talk about a safety? Can we do something like groundbreaking here, or do we have to talk about the same quarterbacks again and again? So
something groundbreaking.
What we give the fans is kind of what they end up with because they don't know how to watch tape. So when you look at the top end of the class and you go Lemon and Tate and Tyson and Cooper and Boston and Concepcion And then you say, okay, and then there's slot guys like Antonio Williams, and then you got big guys like Bell and Brazel, and what about Jeremy Bernard and Surratt and Ted Hurst? And now all of a sudden you start rolling those names out, and they're like, ooh, man, that's deep, right?
Yeah.
When it might not be.
Man, we had the best time with Mike Mayock. A lot of you guys know him as Mike Mayock, but he's like a senior me. Michael Francis Mayock Sr. is out.